Good afternoon, LaPorte. Yeah. I'm Phil. I'm with the NoCo Rebuilding Network. We're a network of over 100 building professionals, local nonprofits, and businesses, local businesses in this area. And our mission is to build back homes after disasters, safer, stronger, and smarter. That's how we define sustainability. And in relation to the fire, we safer meant using fire-adapted and firewise techniques. But I've always has anyone ever heard of TED? Yeah? I've always wanted to do a TED Talk because I thought it was so cool. And my idea for a TED Talk is that I would say, I'm Phil, and I'm with the NoCo Rebuilding Network, and then someone else in the audience would stand up and say,
I'm Bill, and I'm with NoCo Rebuilding.
And then someone else in the audience would stand up and say, and then someone else in the audience would stand up and say,
I'm Erica, I'm a volunteer with the NoCo Rebuilding Network.
yeah, and someone else would say, yeah, and then the homeowners would raise their hand and they would say,
NoCo bought my window.
NoCo bought my finishing and more.
I'm designing these things.
Half the people that that are around here today have been involved with the NoCo Rebuilding Network one way or another. They're either volunteering, they're giving their time and their expertise, they're building homes, or they're having homes, they're building their own homes, or they're local businesses or nonprofits that have come to our Dirt to Drape series, which was 26 sessions every other Wednesday, starting a few months after the fire and going to June 5th, 2013 at the Bellevue Grange every night. So that's one of the things that we did, the educational series. And I just like to give a round of applause to all the people that have been involved. And would you join me? It is a great honor to sit here and represent all these people, to represent our community and watch how our community can rebuild itself one house at a time. And I think in light of the recent events, we lost 286 homes from the High Park fire and Woodland Heights fire combined, 83. And the scope of the flooding is about 5 to 10 times that. So our hope is to take the NoCo model, the education, the professional network, the local business supplier support, our integration with the long-term recovery group, and our wonderful association with other nonprofits like NCRES and the National Center for Craftsmanship, Habitat for Humanity, et cetera, pull that all together and continue to rebuild Colorado's communities one house at a time.
Best way to reduce energy is to build a house right. So as you're going through this process, unfortunately, there may be a real good opportunity here to pick up some great tips from these folks that are here today and others. And I'm always there if you're on the PVREA grid to assist you as well. But let's try to build these houses tighter and insulate them and seal them up correctly. Make sure they're healthy and done right. You've got some experts here all around us here today that I know real well that will help you with that. If you're a PVREA member on our grid, all you need to do is just give me a call at PVREA 970-282-6464. I've got some cards over here, and I have some information on my table if you'd like to visit with me and talk about some other ideas, or if you're just wanting to retrofit your house or whatever else may be going on here. So.
I'm cheap. Basically, not so much. Yesterday marked the retirement of our mortgage. So for the rest of my life, I'm counting on being a few $100,000 less in debt. However, I still needed a house. Because a couple of those kids up there, actually 3 of them, one of them made the front page of the paper today, still need a roof over their head. So when I started looking at the collection of things that I thought were important, A, a roof overhead, B, having it to the point where it was as independent as possible. So, you know, being an involuntary, well, I'll call it becoming an involuntary participant in this is like, well, if we're going to do it, let's see if we can find some ways. And one of the first things I did was I started looking at how we design heating and refrigeration systems. And when I looked at, we did what's called the Earthship Academy. And if anybody here is interested in, you know, learning some interesting techniques, Michael Reynolds has done a fabulous job of developing a curriculum. It was a 6-week project, a couple of $1,000, but well worth it. And by the way, they gave us a 50% discount on that. So if you want to go down to Taos or if you got the time, that's a really good program. But when I looked at the way that the energy got used in those structures, even though they were incredibly efficient, approximately 65% of all the energy that they captured from the solar panels went into batteries to drive the dang refrigerator. And then I started looking at the refrigerator and I'm like, wow, the dang refrigerator pumps energy out of one space into another one. Why in the world aren't we putting the heat out of the refrigerator into the dang hot water heater? And I'm looking at all these systems like, well, the other thing I noted about even the most sustainable buildings is they wasted all the solar energy or most of the solar energy that went on the roof. So when I sat down and had me a couple of margaritas and a couple more martinis, I said, well, why don't we turn the dang roof into a big ass mirror, so our house is likely to have the largest solar oven in North America. Over 4,000 square feet of solar collector to bounce the sun off. And then when I looked at that, I'm like, well, I bet if we use that smart, we could drive both the refrigerator and the hot water heater. And that's sort of the basis of the system. And then with Mark's help over here, and if any of you fellers would like to save a few dollars, he's not only cut his prices in half, but he's probably saved me probably $10,000 in screw-ups so far. Thank you, Mark. So I don't do this necessarily for a living. There are just certain things you don't think of. So it's always important to note. And one of the things I'll say is if you need good quality help in this community, you really don't have to look much farther than you can throw a Frisbee. So anyway, I don't know that I have much more to say than that. It's just, you know, when you get into the details of the specifics of the technology, there's some really fabulous technologies out there. I did a quick accounting of our building, and my goal is to get the structure up for under $50 a square foot. And I did my quick accounting on our foundation, and by the time we finished the concrete pour on the foundation, we'd spent under $2,000 on materials. And so we're well on the way to probably not only one of the most sustainable houses, but probably the least expensive construction costs, perhaps in Colorado. We're sweating real hard to get dried in for winter. If that works, we should be able to do a little bit of indoor work, but our final move-in date's targeting next autumn. Just because we have to be we're trying to spend so little money, we're flexible with the time. The velocity that we're proceeding is about the same as you'd see with conventional house. The sustainable stuff hasn't cost us much time, and it's actually saved us quite a bit of money. And anybody wants further information, please feel free to contact me. Our website that I'm blogging is esquibb.com, esquibb.com. If any of you are interested in volunteering, I've set up a national registry for volunteers, for folks that are there. If you just go over our contact page, you can sign up. And I'm sorry, I forgot to mention that before, but esquibb.com, and then there's the Earthship Volunteers Registry that we maintain.
Well, Passive House is a standard based on our super insulated homes from the 70s. I have with me the super insulated home book, which really was right on the money, and then cheap oil threw all that away. Well, it's coming back because it's not just cheap oil, expensive oil, it's running out of oil. And we're concerned about our future and our kids' future. Buildings use 40% of the energy in the country, and they don't have to. There's no reason for it. I look everywhere and I see junk houses built. 2x6 walls to me are junk houses. Bad windows, poor construction techniques. I know Bill up here has been teaching good construction techniques just to help make those houses better. But we can go a step further with Passive House. It's a standard that went from super insulated homes to Europe. They don't do green because it's cool. They have no choice. They are running out of resources and have too many people. So they really have embraced Passive House. Whole countries have embraced it as the standard. I'm not going to get into all the boring details and numbers. I have a book over there that describes that stuff. But basically, it's super insulated, thermal bridge free, airtight construction that gives you a comfortable home. It's also cheap to run. You don't need an air conditioner. You don't need a furnace. I know that I was talking to Danny about his project. He's got the insulation finished. His wall looks kind of like that model right there, 9.5-inch I-joist hanging outside of a structural system, and he does have his laptop with photos of it. He's happy to share. His home is comfortable right now, sitting there overnight with, of course, no heating system in it. We're doing one for Andrew Mishler back here behind my table up in Masonville. It was 72 degrees to 74 degrees this morning. No heating system. Doesn't even have the HRV running yet. It's just sitting there keeping the heat that comes in through the windows. So we're capturing all the waste heat from the appliances, the people, the right amount of solar gain, because you can cook yourselves out in a well-insulated home by having too much glass. And then we're running it through an air-to-air heat exchanger. That's the distribution, the fresh air makeup system. 90% of the heat that gets dumped out through that sort of system gets captured, sent back into the other rooms that need it. It's a relatively simple system. We have plans right over here you can look at for a house that we're starting in Fort Collins. It's going to be a full passive house. We have another one going up in Livermore. We have Andrews up in Buckskin Heights out of Masonville. Danny's project. There's another one that we're not represented here on the Stowe Prairie Road for Joe Skelton. They're just going to be comfortable. There's not going to be drafts. There's not going to be cold spots, warm spots. You're going to love living in it. The project that we have on the books right now, the plan's over here in Fort Collins. It's for a single man, relatively simple design. It's a couple of slightly offset rectangles, 2-story house. He's got a attached 2-car garage. He owns his lot. He owns his tap fees. The constructed cost, we're talking about $135 to $140 per square foot. So it's less than a good custom. It's got still decent things inside of it. One down in Broomfield that another associate put together last year with hardwood floors, tile, good Amish cabinets, things like that for an older couple was $150 a square foot construction cost. So it's affordable. We are working toward making it very efficient, very simple to build. We're just tightening up our methods more all the time.
Three years ago, the idea to start the NoCo Rebuilding Network was that we would have something in place that could easily be stood up in terms of people, resources, technology, materials, etc. in response in the aftermath of a disaster. And we really didn't anticipate this. And I kicked myself for having this dumb idea. But the fact is that because we had the NoCo Rebuilding Network and because we had all these associations with different groups, while the flooding was still going on, we were able to mobilize our network to get 1,000 pounds of food to people stuck in the lower and the middle Buckhorn Canyons, along with diesel and other construction supplies so they could start building their roads and finding a way out of their situation. Some of those people are here today. So we started immediately with the flooding, and then realize that to build a house, especially after disaster, there's a lot of time constraints involved. Winter's coming soon, and people are going through the shock of having lost their home and everything in it. There's an emotional recovery period that they have to go through. The design process takes 3 to 6 months, and then the actual building is 1 to 2 years. So we have to start like 4 months ago to be able to be prepared to rebuild 1,800 homes. And these people that just lost their homes are looking at us kind of saying, how do you expect me to build back better or more sustainably, or build our communities back when we're underinsured? 80% of the people were underinsured by at least 30%. In the case of the flooding, the situation is even worse, and there's a possibility, because a lot of them didn't have flood riders. We live in the mountains of Colorado. Why would we have flood riders? That we're setting up for quite a large social disaster. So part of our mission is to try to find ways. Mark and Gary and everybody else have all been involved with trying to find ways to help homeowners save money so they can get back to where they were before the disaster, but not just back to where they were with a home that was built 30 years ago, but back to where they were with a home that was built just in the last year. And I think this is really important, not just for the homeowners, but for the extended community. And I don't mean to go on a big diatribe here, but this affects everyone that's here at the swing station today. Because the better building we do in the aftermath of a disaster, each home that comes back better, each family that comes back stronger, each community that recovers affects our economic base. It affects everybody in LaPorte. It affects everybody in Fort Collins, Timnath, Windsor, all of Larimer County. And the fact we have kind of this wonderful support network and all these people in place that are willing to help, not just with NoCo Rebuilding Network, but all the people doing the mudding right now, removing the muck and pumping basements and the sewage and helping people gain access to their homes when they've been stranded up in the flood for 9 days to 14 days. All these things that are happening, it keeps people here in Colorado, and it keeps our families healthy, strong, and our community healthy and strong. I just would encourage you guys to think about that extended model.
So I'd start with an energy audit to begin with. Until you get a direction on where you want to head, that's where everything starts. So with PVREA and members that are here, those energy audits are incredibly affordable. Right now they're at $100, and they'll if you invest $100 in your home, they'll give you a $50 rebate. That may even be better next year. I can't say yet, but you're going to get a fairly thorough audit and some educational information here that will help you make decisions as to where you want to go with your money and how you want to approach this house. So I like to start with an audit. Just to throw things out is really not the right way to do it. I found that out the hard way. So, and many others have as well.
Some of our projects, and you can see the wall sample over here, Andrew is up Buckskin Heights, his project, and he's concerned about fire raging up that hill. So we do all we can to work fire adaptive technologies, firewise, into the construction. This kind of green material on the outside of the wall system there under the cement board siding is rock wool bats that's completely non-flammable. And we put that on the outside of the insulation layer, which again has 9 to 12 inches of a non-flammable insulation material that's packed tight, and then the structure underneath it. So when we're designing energy efficient homes, it's also being fire safe. Joe Skelton's project, they're completely wrapping everything under the siding, under the roofing with gyp rock, with fire rock. So they're putting gypsum board under all of that, which was an engineering challenge, but we pulled that through, putting the rock wool on the outside with those long screws is another engineering challenge, and so we're working on all of those things. Young lady asked me the other day what branch of engineering, and I got to thinking about that. So someone go into is structural engineering. I mean, we need to figure out how to make these systems work so they're safe and they don't fall down and they resist the forces that are going to resist it. All the forces. The thicker materials are the ones that can resist it better. Thin 1/4 inch siding will just flare right up and burn your house down. Even regular double pane windows are not the best because it'll blow right out. Phil knows this. He had quite a few of them happen to his house. Some of our passive house windows, because we use triple pane, we're even going with tempered glass. Get rid of that vulnerability. We had people, neighbors in the Crystal Fire, log homes, ICF homes. The windows blew out and burned the house out from the inside.
The positive side of all this is that as a result of the fire and our collective community involvement, we now have bunches of firewise certified architects, structural engineers, and we have contractors who are familiar with the techniques and can put it together, because it's one thing to make material choices that are in line with firewise, but it's another thing to assemble those things correctly so they actually do the job that they're intended to do.
Heavy timber performs better, so if you need to put a beam in instead of having 3 2x12s that have gaps, as that stuff does shrink and move, has gaps between it, a heavy timber will char and insulate itself. I've seen fires in attics before where I had to certify that the 2x4s are okay, and you scrape away 3/8 of an inch of char and you still have a 2x4 because it's all still there. Well, I've been in buildings where heavy timber and a steel beam, heavy timber, they scrape away the char and paint it, and the timber is all, or the steel is all twisted and warped out of shape and dropped. So for heavy construction, heavy timber is a good way to go. Even heavy timber joists on your deck. Keep it clean underneath, that's a big thing. Get rid of areas that embers can fall into and stay there and ignite the needles that are laying there. Keep the junk from underneath it.
I just also like to add, with respect to all the people that used heavy timbers and lost their deck and their home, there are parts of a fire, especially in the High Park fire and other fires like it, that it doesn't matter what material you use, concrete, metal, wood, polyurethane, etc. People are going to lose their homes.
Firestorm.
And that's a fact. But we're not saying that firewise is a solution, or fire adapted communities is a solution that means nobody will lose their home. Just like Flood Smart and all the other things with the other disasters, doesn't mean that something isn't gonna happen. But we can reduce the frequency. We can put the odds in our favor, and we can change the chances. I think another in addition to what everyone has already said, our local lumber yards can carry materials. There are fire treated wood products which Mawson is now starting to carry. There's the decking material, the composite decking. Some of it has been rated by California Fire Code, and then they unrated it because when it burns, it doesn't actually burn, but it melts, and it's a hazard to firefighters because of the hydrogen cyanide gas that it emits. So, I think, I don't mean to be vague or waffle on your question, but the point is it's not a total solution, but it's about making choices. Those choices start with site selection, they start with mitigation, they start with good forestry practices that the gentleman from the USDA recommended, and those go a long way into helping, and then material choices, installation choices, and the whole supply chain from, Mawson was able to get, in the example of windows, double pane windows with just one pane that was tempered, the outside pane. And again, you come back to the fact is that it's not a rich community. People have limited funds and they have to make choices. We can't just buy the world. Mark has been doing a great example of reusing and recycling goods and keeping his costs down. So a lot of esoteric, fancy materials are not available to us as choices, and we have to find a way to provide materials and installation techniques that a normal person can afford and be able to utilize in their home, both in the mountains, but also here in Bellevue and in Fort Collins.